Welcome to Lakers Central. I'm Alex. That's Vinay, and we're here to do the pregame show for the Lakers Suns matchup that's going to take place in about a half an hour or so. We're finally going to get to see LeBron James and Anthony Davis on the court, and the starters were announced a little while ago. LeBron, Dennis Schroeder, Kyle Kuzma, Anthony Davis, and Marc Gasol starting for the Lakers, and Chris Paul, Devin Booker, Mikal Bridges, Jay Crowder, and DeAndre Ayton. So Vinay, LeBron and Anthony Davis make their preseason debut. I'm sure making a lot of Lakers fans happy, man. Frank said they're only going to play a little bit in the first half, and that's really it.
Yes.
So, what do you expect to see in their limited action tonight?
Well, I mean, they're running with basically what I think people are expecting to be our starting lineup minus Kuzma, since they're expecting either KCP, who is out with some, minor. I don't even think it's a. I don't think he's hurt or anything. He's just taking a break probably. And Caruso's out also.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the debate was either Wes or KCP would start, but
Right.
seeing as Kuzma is starting and Wes is not starting but is healthy, I think the reasonable assumption is that KCP may end up being the starter. So I'm just looking forward to see how they all integrate. We got a cool look at the pick and roll offense and all that sort of stuff in the first game against the Clippers that the Lakers won, and then we got an idea of what the Marc Gasol led offense looks like when he's on the floor for the Lakers. So now we get to see how Schroeder and Gasol get to fit in with Anthony Davis and LeBron. I'm not really expecting them to be amazing, but I also won't be surprised if they're amazing because they've just kind of been waiting and watching their teammates kind of play really well and stuff like that. So, I'm just looking forward to seeing how they look. Hopefully, they can shake off any rust if they do have any. But I think like Laker fans that I'm really going to be looking at the new guys. We already know what we get from LeBron, and that's MVP caliber basketball, and we know what we get from Anthony Davis, which is near MVP and sometimes MVP caliber basketball. So
Mm-hmm.
it's just seeing how all the parts fit and stuff like that. So I think if they come out and all their passes look crispy and they're making shots and all that sort of stuff, I think Laker fans are going to be even more hyped. The Suns are a pretty good team, and they're playing a pretty good starting lineup too. So I actually want to see how they look. I think the matchup of the night is probably going to be Kuzma against Devin Booker, at least for the start of the game. Be
Right.
curious to see what Kuzma looks like against a very, very prolific scorer in Devin Booker.
I'm glad to see these guys back on the court. It's going to be in limited action, but I'm sure LeBron and Anthony Davis are pleased with what they've seen so far from their old teammates and their new teammates. Right, like these guys have looked really good, and so we're gonna get to see what a potential starting lineup looks like with these guys. I know Frank is going to tinker with the lineups all preseason long, probably the
Mm-hmm.
start of the season as well. There'll be some guys in and out, but I like the idea that he's starting Kuzma. I think that's a confidence thing for Kuz that he gets the nod. Um, Devin Booker can get hot preseason or not, so hopefully. What I want to make sure is with Kuz is if Devin Booker does get hot, that Kuz's confidence stays where it needs to be. He continues to
Yeah,
try to play good defense. Booker's going to hit tough shots. That's just the way it works with guys like him. But you just
yeah,
try to make it tough on him. I'm curious to see what Anthony Davis looks like against Jay Crowder. I mean, Jay Crowder is a good defender, but he's undersized against Anthony Davis. So kind of like when the Rockets will put PJ Tucker on him. There's really you have no answer with when there's a size difference like that. But I'm sure Anthony Davis probably won't even go too hard tonight anyway. But
yeah.
it's Schroeder, he stays in the starting lineup or he starts next to LeBron. We know that's something that he's talked about wanting to do. So we're gonna see how that looks. Are you surprised that Kuz is starting over say West or even THT tonight?
Yeah, so I didn't expect THT to start only because if Caruso was going to be out games, we don't have a true backup point guard, and it's pretty clear that Tucker is like probably the next best option, at least from what we've seen in the preseason games. So I'm not surprised that Tucker isn't starting. I am surprised that Kuzma is starting because I would have thought West would have started in his spot instead. But it's like I said, I think Vogel is probably. I mean, we've said it. Vogel is probably going to spend a lot of this season still kind of figuring out what the right combinations of players and
Mm-hmm.
stuff like that is. I also wonder if the reason why that Kuzma is starting as opposed to Wes is because they want to get the synergy between Gasol and Kuzma. Like they
Yeah.
want to get that chemistry going a little bit better. Last game, Kuzma was clearly the guy who was like the most active cutter out of the entire group because of Gasol repeatedly finding him on cuts and stuff like that. So I don't really mind. I really don't mind that. Like that's sort of what Vogel wants to see more of. I think it'll be interesting. If Phoenix tries to go in the half court, what they do with Mark and stuff like that. Schroeder, I just want to see how he pushes the offense. That very first game that he played, he started the game off just being purely a facilitator. Like he ran some pick and roll, but he would still kick it out to his teammates and that sort of stuff. So it's just seeing like kind of how that sort of fits and stuff like that. But at least now we'll get to see what the stagger pattern sort of looks like. Since Schroeder's going to start next to Braun and AD, we'll get to see what happens if Braun or AD comes off the floor and Montrez comes in for whoever he comes in for, if he comes in for AD or for Gasol. Well, I'll be curious to see if Schroeder stays on the floor. He may not because THT is so good, or he's been so good these past 2 games.
Yep.
But like we've been saying, that's a good problem to have. So I'm actually kind of curious. Originally, I was thinking it's funny when we started before preseason started, we were saying like, hey, the Lakers should probably keep Dennis Schroeder or LeBron on the floor. One of those two has to be on the floor at all times. But now, like with the emergence of THT, there may be like a situation where you may not have to have both of them on the floor if he can continue to be this good. Not 30 points good, but
Right.
solid backup point guard good. So I'm very, very curious to see that.
And with Marc Gasol, right, the way he facilitates the offense, and so I'm really curious how he looks next to LeBron. I mean, I'm sure they'll be great, but just he's going to take some of that burden off of LeBron for having to create for everybody. And I think even when LeBron goes to the bench, let's say you take LeBron and Schroeder off, and you bring in THT, and maybe you bring Gasol back in, or you leave him in the game. There's a veteran presence out there. There's another guy that can facilitate the offense, so THT doesn't have to put it, take everything on his own shoulders. And Gasol playing next to guys like Kyle Kuzma. Kuzma's looked really good cutting to the basket, playing off ball. You pointed out that he's taking less dribbles to get his shots off, and that's been really beneficial to him. And I think that credit a guy like Marc Gasol, for finding him and leading him into the right spots. And so I'm curious
Mm-hmm.
to see how they look together. I'm also curious to see how THT looks like when he's not playing 35 or 40 minutes, right? The first couple games, he's really
Yeah.
played the entire game almost. And so I want to see what he looks like coming off the bench with the regular guys out there and see if he can still be that spark with, say, he's going to play more minutes tonight anyway, but let's say he's only going to play 20 or 30 minutes, maybe 10 less than what
Yeah.
he's been playing. I want to see if he
Yeah.
can keep that energy when he comes off the bench.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens in a reduced role. One of the folks in the post game asked, how many minutes if he can play at this level or be a rotation player at this level, how many minutes could you see him playing? And it is a genuinely good question. We guessed that maybe it'd be somewhere between 15 and 20 minutes that
Mm-hmm.
you could try and squeeze in if they're going to be trying to rest guys. And obviously Braun is going to sit out back to backs most likely all season. Same thing with AD. Even I mean, all the older guys may sit out the back to backs in the regular season. So you may see Wes sit, you may see Braun sit, you may see actually those are really the only two old guys that we have right on this team
And
outside of the guys
Gasol,
at the end of the yeah, like Gasol may sit,
yeah.
Markeith may sit, like those guys may sit on the back to backs. So he'll get a lot of minutes in those games for sure. But it'll just be interesting to see how that sort of all works out. But yeah, in a reduced capacity, like we saw what a reduced capacity did to Kuzma's counting stats. He had to be like super elite
Yeah.
in the short, small opportunities that he had for him to be successful. Horton Tucker is a different type of player because he can attack the rim, like with a live dribble, and he's really, really good so far from what it looks like in the pick and roll. So he should still be successful,
Mm-hmm.
even in short minutes. But it does change the way you play. Like if you're only going to get like 15 minutes in a game compared to like 35 minutes a game, like you play with like a different kind of urgency. Sometimes it sits in the back of your mind. But he's been pretty good so far. So I wouldn't be surprised if he plays well. I'll be curious to see. Phoenix has a lot of good wing defenders. They tried to stock up on a bunch of wings. So I'll be interested to see what happens. Michael Bridges, um, he's got like a crazy wingspan, just like
Mm-hmm.
Tucker does, where like it doesn't match up at all with how
Mm-hmm.
tall he is. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see him on Tucker, just to kind of match up the defense offense. So we'll see what happens.
I mean, Lakers preseason games haven't been easy. I mean, look, they played the Clippers the
Mhm.
first two games. The first game was ugly. Second game, the Lakers basically blew them out. And now you're playing the Suns, who many people expect to maybe be a top four, top five seed in the West this year, especially considering what Chris Paul did with OKC last year. Devin Booker is a flat out star, and so they're getting real matchups. And so I know that some people don't put too much stock in preseason, but I want to see them win every one of these games. That doesn't mean they will, and that doesn't mean whether they win or lose a preseason game is no indication if they're going to be in the finals next year or into this year or whatever. But
Yeah.
I want to see them come out with the same energy they did against game two, against the Clippers. Like I want to see them run a little bit of their offense. Start to some of the new guys and the guys who have been there
Mhm.
see how they look together, start building a little bit of that camaraderie. It seems like this team. I'm sure you've seen the stuff on Twitter and Instagram with like the jokes with AD and Kuz and Trez. I mean, these guys seem to get along off the court, and that should be no surprise considering what the Lakers did last year off the court. But I just want to see that there be some camaraderie while they're playing on the court, man, and just see what they look like. I don't know if LeBron and Anthony Davis are going to average 25 plus points a game this season. AD might. I don't know about LeBron. I don't know if his scoring takes a bit of a dip, and even his stats across the board take a dip as other guys kind of emerge. But I want to see him beat Phoenix, man. I really do. I
Yeah.
no matter who Phoenix is, who they're rolling out tonight. I expect Chris Paul not to play anything more than what Anthony Davis and LeBron are playing. He'll probably only play the first half as well. But I want to see how they play, and
Yeah.
I want to see Kuz do well. So
Yeah, that feel like this will be. It's really not a big deal that he's starting. We've seen Kuzma's, for 3 years now, starting
right.
spot moments. So, but he's always for him. It's always sort of trial by fire. So I'm just curious to see what he looks like. Does the cutting work? Does he take the offensive load off of LeBron and them and stuff like that because he's able to get easy buckets? I'm actually kind of curious to see also what an Anthony Davis and Dennis Schroeder pick and roll looks like. I wouldn't be surprised if we see also Dennis Schroeder do some cutting and stuff like that to get to the
Mm-hmm.
rim and try and get some easy buckets. So we'll see. We'll see what happens, but it's this is much closer to the starting lineup that we expect to see.
Yeah.
Really, the only guy that's not in that is not there is probably KCP or West, whoever would be in Kuz's spot. So I'm just curious to see what sort of sets and stuff like that. If nothing else, we get to kind of glean more and more information as to what Vogel's going to do. And I think his comments, he said he wasn't completely settled on Dennis Schroeder being the starting point guard. He wasn't completely settled on like what Kuzma's role within the
Mm-hmm.
rotation and stuff like that. Some of that I think is like him just kind of being diplomatic and
Yeah.
making sure they know that nothing is given. It has to be earned. So we'll see how all this stuff works. This is closer to a normal rotation for us.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it is, and Dennis Schroeder. I mean, he's starting, so when you talk about you want to start, spotlight is going to be on you. You're going up against Chris Paul, one of
Yeah,
the
Chris
greatest
Paul.
point
Yep.
guards of all time. They certainly know each other. So I want to see him perform well. I don't expect him. Look, he doesn't need to drop 20 or 30, but I just want to see him hit his
Yeah.
shots. Be slithery to quote you. I want to see him get
Yeah.
get to the basket and but he's been good so far. He didn't play in the second game, but he was good in that first game.
Yeah, for him. I think it just as we watch him, it comes down to like his decision making and stuff like that. So we just have to see like how the fit is. I feel like I mean we keep saying it over and over again, but like fit and
Yeah.
chemistry. I mean that's what we were saying was the most important thing last year. It's going to be the most important thing this year. We know that certain guys are always going to be really really great fits, and Gasol is one of those guys who's just an easy fit. He's just going to fit
Hmm.
right in. We can see how that's going to work. He's going to do his role because Dennis is more on the ball, it's a little bit different. Same thing with Montrez because Montrez needs the ball in his hands to be a little bit more effective. It's different. So that's basically the way I see it. Like you just got to take a look and see exactly like how the fit works. But I'm excited to see what they look like. We get closer to what our real lineup is. We're now in game 3, which
Hmm.
means we'll only have one more preseason game after this, and then we're off into the regular season where everything may matter. So I will be very very excited to see what this team looks like against a team like the Suns.
What do you think? When we see AD and Gasol on the floor together, or AD and Trez, what do you think we see out of those pairings?
So I think I want to see what they do with that Gasol when it's AD and Gasol, it's I'm pretty sure it's going to be that 5-out stuff that they were running where
Mm-hmm.
Gasol was at the top of the high post. I'm
Yep.
just curious to see what all the different actions are going to be. So in the first game, they did those left block isolation post ups for
Yeah.
Montrez, right? So now if Gasol is playing, and let's say the first action that they run is AD goes to do a screen for Kuzma, Kuzma cuts to the rim. That's going to be the first option, right? Like that's going to
Mm-hmm.
be the first play that they probably run. If Kuzma's open, Gasol's going to lead him for an open cut. If that play isn't there, then what's the next play? Is it the left hand side block post up for AD so he can get a jump shot off or whatever it is? Um, and then the thing I really want to know is how is Phoenix going to defend that? It's preseason, so they probably haven't scouted very much out of it. But are they still going to be sending those extra, like the guy on the baseline, the guy from Gasol's side, and then if somebody does come help, how does AD adjust to it? So it's like those sort of small things. And then with AD and Montrez, it's just literally like how do they work together? Like
Mm-hmm.
I think their communication will be good. Clearly on Instagram, like if you've been following them kind of joking around with each other,
Mm-hmm.
they're buddies. They like making fun of each other and they enjoy like kind of hanging around with each other and stuff like that. So I'm curious to see like how that synergy works out on the court. Like clearly Montrez is a bruiser. He likes getting down low, deep in the paint and stuff like that when he battles for buckets or rebounds and stuff like that. And AD can do it, but his center of gravity is a little bit higher, so he's a little bit more jump shot oriented.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but obviously he has a pretty good handle and stuff like that for his size too as well. So it's just seeing how the defensive synergy works out for those guys. Gasol, I'm not really worried about. Montrez, we talked about last time. He gets kind of overwhelmed by really big guys if they're much taller than he is. So it'll be interesting to see how they all fit. But I wouldn't be surprised if Montrez is the primary substitution for Anthony Davis. So they may not see the floor at the same time very much. So I'll be curious to see how that looks.
So there's a comment that came in. I'm gonna put it on the screen from Sonic
Sure.
Fighter. Thanks for sending this in, Sonic. Hope AD's mid range stays as consistent as it did in the bubble. And so he sent this in right as I was thinking about AD this season.
Mhm.
And does AD have another level to go to? Or I mean, he's already great. Like he's an MVP caliber player. He's a
Mhm.
defensive
Mhm.
player of the year caliber player. But is there one more level he can get to?
I think the question is really I don't know if there's a level that he can get to because I think he was pretty spectacular in the bubble as
Yep.
far as his shooting splits are concerned. I think the real question is does what are there was the bubble shooting real? Like
Mm-hmm.
was that a real thing or was that just something because of they didn't have rest or sorry they didn't have travel? Was it a case of the environment and stuff like that? Because I think that's going to be a big conversation
Oh yeah.
going on this season for all these guys who are like super prolific guys. Donovan Mitchell was playing out of his mind. Devin Booker was playing out of his mind. Jamal Murray was playing out of. You're talking about guys who were shooting like 50, 40, 90 or something like that, which is an
Yep.
absurd number. And Kate and AD, I was about to say Katie, but AD was one of those guys who was shooting at an absurd clip.
Mm-hmm.
So I agree with Sonic. Will his mid-range shooting keep up? That'll be interesting to see. But it's also like, does he look good? Right? Like, does
Yeah.
his shot look good? Does his form look good? Is he kind of just still working through the motions? That sort of stuff. I think he won't have to rely on his mid-range as much because the roster around the Lakers is much better. It was a big problem last year
Mm-hmm.
because when Braun would go to the bench, teams would focus in and send double teams and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I think it screwed with his rhythm a lot. But now you have much better guys around you, so teams may not double team you the same way. Um, More than his shooting, I'm curious to see his decision making. That's something that he had trouble with. When teams would send double teams or they'd start shading guys, his decision making was a little like I want to say suspect, but it wasn't great. So I want to see what he does in case teams try to double team him or they try to send help defenders or something like that.
So I want to bring up Kustas Antetokounmpo um, because it's preseason and these guys usually get a few minutes, but his brother Giannis obviously finally signed his max extension, so he's committed to Milwaukee for the next 5 years or until he requests a trade. But regardless, Kustas has looked shaky out there, man, in the preseason. It does not look like he's gotten better since the Lakers brought him on last year, and so do you think that he stays on the roster at this point? Because he's not. I mean, I don't know. He's not really improving. So what's the point in using a roster spot for him?
Yeah, so he is a two-way guy. I don't know if the Lakers have identified a two-way guy that they absolutely love that they
Mm-hmm.
want to have take his spot. Um, obviously, the assumption was that the only reason he's on the roster is because it gives the Lakers some sort of
Yeah.
avenue to talk to Giannis. And so I agree. I have not seen anything out of him that makes it seem like he's like destined. Like I don't think he's better than Kcock. I don't think he's better
Right.
than um yeah, I mean that's probably his direct comparison in terms of his position. So because he's a two-way, it's not as much of an issue. It's just a matter of figuring out like who would fill that two-way spot that's really worth it. I don't think if the true reason he's on this roster is because of his brother or having the angle to his brother, avenue to his brother. I don't think Rob is going to end up letting him go. But I don't know, man. I'm not too. It may change. He may play better. But that two-way spot may be a little bit better allocated to somebody else that we could actually use, maybe somebody on the wing that we can give minutes
Right.
to. But we'll have to see. It's from what we've seen in the preseason. I don't. I don't watch the South Bay Lakers last year, so I don't know if he made improvements. But he just seems kind of lost on the court,
Mhm.
even in the preseason game. So uh, usually, when somebody's consistently lost and consistently out of position, that usually means that he's probably not cut out for uh, like the big leagues in that
Right.
regards. So, but he is only a two way, so it's not too bad of a situation that he's on the roster.
See, that's what I was thinking. Just the Lakers have been so good at finding guys late rounds. They've been good at finding two-way guys that at this point you've had him for over a year. He hasn't shown that improvement, and a lot of people do speculate the reason he was on the roster is to kind of get a backdoor to Giannis. If the backdoor to Giannis is now off the table, and Kustas has not improved himself, then the question is, do they keep that spot? Do they keep him in that spot when it could be better allocated to somebody else? We don't know yet because we don't know what Rob's thinking is. I also don't think that they would cut him like today or tomorrow because then it looks real suspicious that they cut him that
No,
quick too.
right, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
So I mean, they're probably I think they're gonna try and continue to give him a fair shake and see what happens.
yeah,
But they've just been too good, man, at identifying late round prospects or guys that kind of just come out of nowhere. That I can't imagine
yeah,
why he's still on this team other than you know they wanted to talk to Giannis.
yeah, yeah. I agree. But Lakers are firmly aware of what the optics look like if they
Mm-hmm.
cut him even within this week. So uh, it's a little tough because there's no South Bay Laker game. So like Laker fans can't get on the timeline and be like, "Yo, this guy's kicking ass in South Bay.
Right.
Like we need to sign him to a two way." So that's kind of part of the problem too. So it's just we'll see how it all works out and stuff like that. But I think game's going to be starting soon. So I don't know if there's any more questions, but we should probably let the fans go so they're not listening to us over the Lakers.
Yeah, I mean, shout out to everybody that tuned in to the pregame. We'll jump back on shortly after the game ends and do our post game
Yes.
shows. So thank you guys for all the questions. Thank you for tuning in. And if you're on Twitter, we'll engage with you on the timeline. You see our
Yeah.
Twitter handles right there. We'll talk to you then. Thanks, guys.
And if Kuzma has a good game, I'm going to be posting a picture of his photo shoot saying "contract here, Kuz" on the timeline. All right. I don't know if you saw that GQ or
I, s-
Hout. I don't know what the
I
name of
saw
that
it.
publication is. Oh yeah, there's some great pictures in there that I'm going to be posting. So I need Kuzma to play well just so I can irritate Laker fans just for fun, not because not for any other reason. I just like messing around. But enjoy the
Well,
game, everybody.
guys, go ahead and tag at VKillhim if you get upset at him irritating you. That's his handle, not mine. So you can bother him all night if he pisses you off. So we'll, we'll we'll jump on right after the game, guys. Again, thanks for joining us, and we'll talk to you then.